Welcome to Through the Word, leading you on a journey through the entire Bible, one chapter at a time. Today, Chris Langham guides us through the Old Testament book of Genesis. Now to Pastor Chris.
We begin our journey through the Word at Genesis chapter 1 today, back to the very beginning of it all. If you have ever been fascinated by the creative process, or by watching an artist or inventor at his work, this is as good as it gets. It is the story of creation, and it starts at verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So God starts out by setting the basic building blocks in place. In the beginning, time, God created the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. Now God has a workspace, as though the great artist has just set out the canvas and the paints. Then in verse 2, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Light is truly a wonder. Light is so gracefully simple, yet complex beyond comprehension. Just try asking your physics teacher to explain what photons are made of, or how they move, or better yet, how they're formed. Photons are awesome. All the beauty of the visible world comes to us by way of light. And verse 4 puts it very simply. God saw that light was good. In many ways, light reminds me of God himself. 1 John says that God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. When Jesus entered the world, the Bible describes the event as light coming into the world. And so it was when Jesus entered my life and my heart. It was as though light filled the darkness of my heart and my mind. And suddenly, in the most complex yet elegantly simple way, I could see. Notice that God separates the light from darkness. Separating is a key work that God does throughout the creation story. And he still separates the light from dark in our lives today. Then in verse 5, there was evening and morning, the first day. The word day is an important one for those of you wondering just how old the earth is. Were the days 24 hours long, or much longer, as in millions of years each? Bible scholars argue this one, and there's a lot of science and study behind it. Definitely worth looking into, but way too much to cover here. Moving on to day 2, verse 6 begins, "And God said, Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." The expanse in the verse is the sky, the great accomplishment of day 2, with clouds above and oceans below. Now, as you read through the creation story, keep in mind that God was not simply putting the water and sky here and there as he pleased. He was designing the very nature of things, gravity and temperature, evaporation and condensation that make the water cycle possible. The water cycle is amazing, and all of life would be impossible without it. And did you realize that the evolution theory offers no explanation for the water cycle, because it's non-living? Atheistic evolution attempts to explain living things, but has to rely on dumb luck for the nature of light, water, gravity, magnetism, and so many other natural laws and elements that are set perfectly to make life possible. And if you think that the Bible can't be trusted for matters of science, consider this. The water cycle was not understood by scientists until the 16th century AD, but the Bible described it accurately back in the 9th century BC, in Ecclesiastes 1, and even earlier in Job 36. So how do you like them apples? And speaking of apples, day 3 gives us the very first signs of life. God brings dry land out of the vast seas, and in verse 11, God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind, on the earth." And it was so. Now this is amazing to me. God made the beauty and color and amazing complexity of the plants, and he made them out of dirt. And inside of every living plant and tree, God placed seeds. Seeds are incredible. Every tiny, unimpressive seed hides within it the detailed blueprints and complete construction plan for an entire plant, or flower, or tree. From roots to stem, to bark, to leaves, to branches, to fruit. It's all in there, coded in a language more complex than any that man can speak. Even the tools and machinery for construction are tucked away inside that little seed. See, all of life is self-reproducing from the very beginning, and that is astoundingly complex. Mankind has never created a physical machine that replicates itself. Some of the world's smartest are trying it, and it's crazy complicated. And again, the evolution theory is forced to rely on dumb luck for this one. The very first living thing must be intricate enough to reproduce another version of itself. To me, that is like saying a bomb was dropped on a mountain with aluminum ore in it, and out of the rubble came a working jet airplane. And the airplane, by pure dumb luck, made baby airplanes. That's evolution, step 1. So the land was planted, and once again in verse 12, God saw that it was good. I like this. If you have ever designed and built something that came from your own creative spark and imagination, you know what it's like to step back and just look at it working. It is good. Then day 4 begins in verse 14. And here God fills the expanse of space with the stars and the sun and the moon and all their awesomeness. Did you know that the moon is sized and placed with incredible precision, set perfectly in its orbit for light, seasons, and tides that make life possible? For the details and lots more information about the impeccable design of our little planet, I'll recommend to you a book and a movie, both of which are called The Privileged Planet. Once again, God saw that it was good. And day 5 brings us into the creation of all the birds and the vast array of sea life in the world's oceans. God told all the fish to be fruitful, and are they ever? No time to rest yet. Day 6 brings us back to dry land for the creation of all the animals. In verse 24, God made them all out of dirt, and each one according to their kinds. That phrase is repeated several times, which means that it's important. The word kind essentially means species. God made male and female creatures of each species, then allowed for mutations to give us the vast variety of animals we have today. After all of the creatures are set in place, God creates the most complex and magnificent machine in the known universe, humans. Verse 26, Then God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. This is the pinnacle of creation. 2 essential things to watch for as you read here: the image of God and the dominion of man. The image of God is perhaps the most important and most fascinating element in all of God's creation. It is as though God placed his signature on the painting. He marked his work of art with a seal, his own image. What does it mean to be made in God's image? I'll let you think about that, and we'll come back to it in chapter 5. Then we see the dominion of man. Understand that God's call for mankind to rule is not a call to tyranny and abuse of all nature. We were made in God's image, and we are called to rule in God's way, with responsibility and righteousness, compassion and care. A godly ruler is a servant to that which he rules, and we are called to tend the earth, as a good shepherd his sheep, or as a farmer his fields. So the work is done. 6 times during the creation process, God stops just to see how good it is. Then after 6 days of hard work, when it's all complete and a young couple is busy taking it all in, God stops one more time to look at it in verse 31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. Read Genesis 1 today, and if you get one thing from this chapter, I hope that you will take some time each day to do just what God did. Stop, look around at what he made, and see that it is very good. Now, the world that you see today is a corrupted version of what God saw on day 6. Sin has added all kinds of bad to the good. But if you will just look, you are still surrounded by the goodness of God's creation. So read the chapter and take some advice from the book of Job, 37:14. Stop and consider God's wonders.
Join us next time on Through the Word as we continue the journey, one chapter at a time. Start your own journey through the Bible with our web and mobile apps at throughtheword.org. Our apps are free and free to share, so tell your friends and take the journey together. If you'd like to help us reach more listeners, you can donate, share the app, order flyers, or pray for us, all at throughtheword.org or at facebook.com/throughtheword. Chris Langham is the founder of Through the Word Ministries in Huntington Beach, California. You can find information and links for all our teachers on the website. And remember, faith comes by hearing, and hearing through the Word.